viruses have a tendency to mutate, and they do it very subtly and very rapidly. Now there's a warning from a top official that this Ebola virus could become airborne. And if it comes, the government is going to have to stop the spread of a lethal disease. It is highly contagious. It takes one drop of blood to infect somebody. And they're trying to trace the trail now of the people who were exposed to the guy who took on a plane from Liberia and came to Dallas. And Terry has more about that.
Well, up to 100 people in the Dallas area are being watched for symptoms of Ebola because they were in contact with this man from Liberia who's now in the hospital in Dallas with it. And another American has been diagnosed as well. Charlene Aaron has the story.
An American cameraman covering the Ebola outbreak in Liberia for NBC News is the latest U.S. citizen stricken with the deadly virus. Ashoka Mukpu will be flown home to the U.S. for treatment. As the outbreak continues to rage, the government response, both in Africa and the U.S., has been slow and questionable. The disease has already killed more than 3,000 people in Africa, and according to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, there could be as many as 1.4 million cases of Ebola by January. Save the Children reports that Ebola is spreading at the rate of 5 new cases an hour in Sierra Leone. The chief of the United Nations Ebola mission told the London Telegraph that the international community has been a bit late to respond to the epidemic. He also said it's unlikely but possible the Ebola could mutate and become airborne. But other experts say there's no evidence that's ever happened with viruses like Ebola. But the disease can spread in other ways, in the U.S. and around the world, through travel and other means. Health officials are investigating how many people Thomas Eric Duncan might have infected. Duncan is the first ever confirmed case of Ebola on American soil. A Dallas emergency room nurse sent Duncan home despite showing symptoms and admitting he had traveled from West Africa. Duncan's nephew called the CDC after he was turned away from the hospital.
I was terrified, scared, worried.
The CDC has issued a nationwide alert to all hospitals in the U.S. on how to appropriately respond to possible cases of the deadly virus. But experts are confident that U.S. medical procedures will keep Ebola from running wild here.
The only fatal part of it may be the guy whose treatment was delayed, but it's not likely to result in anything else that is, that's catastrophic or fatal.
Duncan's family is quarantined under armed guard in their Dallas apartment.
They cannot come out. They are not even allowed to come on the porch.
Meanwhile, CBN's Operation Blessing remains on the ground in Liberia, providing supplies and working with area churches to teach people about prevention and treatment. Charlene Aaron, CBN News.
Well, in other news, it seems that the president was determined not to take the advice of his experts who surrounded him, at least the ones who said things that were different from the party line. And the party line was that he had destroyed terrorism, Osama bin Laden was dead, and therefore al-Qaeda was diminished and fading quickly from the scene, and nothing else really mattered. Now his own former Secretary of Defense has warned that pulling American troops out of Iraq was a terrible mistake. John Jessup has that story from our CBN News Bureau in Washington. Here's John.
Pat, former Secretary of Defense Leon Panetta says the White House didn't make a deal with Iraq's leadership in 2011 to keep troops in that country, and that it could become a new haven for terrorists to plot attacks against the U.S. Panetta writes in his new book called Worthy Fights that he and others believe the president's team at the White House wanted to do away with the Iraq issue, and so the Obama administration was willing to pull out of the country rather than make a deal that could have preserved American influence. He also believes a small contingent of American troops could have helped the Iraqi government deal with al-Qaeda terrorists in Iraq. Pat, back to you.
It's politics, ladies and gentlemen. I've said it over and over again. That's what they care about, is winning elections, getting their people in office. That's what he's doing right now. He's out politicking. He's out raising money for candidates. He's out giving speeches about the economy, things that aren't true. He says things that aren't true. Maybe he lives in a bubble. Maybe he's self-deluded, or else it's a delivered plan. But what Rush Limbaugh says is the drive-by crowd seems to be buying a lot of that stuff. But nevertheless, the American people are beginning to wonder, what are they doing? Why don't they tell us the truth? John?
Pat, Republicans are criticizing President Obama for his speech on the economy Thursday. The president says under his watch, the economy has been improving, with employment down, jobs up, and gains in energy and manufacturing.
Across the board, the trend lines have moved in the right direction. That's because this new foundation is now in place.
The president added, even though he isn't on the ballot in this fall's congressional elections, his policies will be. But Republicans say the economic recovery under President Obama is much weaker than it was under President Reagan, and they say their own plans for fixing the economy have been ignored. Israel faces accusations of war crimes at the United Nations for its fight against Hamas terrorists. But now the Jewish state is offering an olive branch of sorts to help smooth over its often stormy relationship with the world body by suggesting that it recognize a Jewish holy day as an official UN holiday. Chris Mitchell has that story.
Israel is often singled out at the United Nations for condemnation. Now the Jewish state wants the world body to do something positive. Recognize Yom Kippur as an official UN holiday.
We thought that this was the right moment to recognize also the most important day in the Jewish calendar as being a day which belongs to the whole of humanity and not only to the Jewish people.
There are 10 official holidays at the United Nations, including Christmas, Good Friday, and there's also 2 Muslim holidays. And there are also so-called world days, including Buddhist holidays and the Persian New Year. But so far, no recognition of the Jewish holy days. The book of Leviticus says the Day of Atonement shall be a holy convocation for you. You shall afflict your souls, and you shall do no work on that same day, for it is the Day of Atonement to make atonement for you before the Lord your God.
It's the Day of Atonement because Judaism, at the end of the day, is also at the origin of Christianity and Islam.
Foreign Ministry spokesman Emmanuel Nakshon describes it as the Jewish people's legacy to humanity.
It gives Judaism also its right place among the other important religions.
About 60 countries, including the U.S. and the Christian group called the European Coalition for Israel, support Israel's request.
The Jewish people should be recognized for their holidays. Yom Kippur in particular should be it has a message which goes beyond Judaism.
The request faces a lot of bureaucratic hurdles. It's unlikely the UN would create an 11th day off, mainly due to financial reasons. Yom Kippur could replace a U.S. holiday like Labor Day, or alternate with one of them. So far, the main objection comes from Arab states. Nakshon says recognizing Yom Kippur could help to ease relations with the UN.
We are under the impression that Israel is being singled out in a variety of issues and mostly in a political context. And by giving an official recognition to the most important Jewish holiday, it will be also a step of reconciliation, and it will make our belonging to the UN and our cooperation with the UN much easier.
Israel and the Jewish world mark Yom Kippur this Saturday. By next year, they hope the commemoration includes the international community as well. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Thanks, Chris. Pat, back to you.
When pigs fly, you will see the UN acknowledge an Israeli holiday. But what does that mean? The word in Hebrew, yom, is day, and the verb is kafar, or covering, and the Yom Kippur has to do with the time the high priest went into the Holy of Holies and sprinkled blood upon what was called the mercy seat, and that settled the testimony of the law against the people. And so it was the day of covering where the mercy seat was covered by the blood. It has tremendous significance for Christians and obviously tremendous significance for Jews. Whether the Arabs and the other people will adopt it, it remains to be seen. It would be a nice gesture, but who knows? I mean, miracles do happen. John?
Pat, the deadly enterovirus has been sweeping the nation, mostly striking young kids. So far, 4 children with enterovirus have died. The CDC is investigating whether their deaths were caused by the virus or something else. CBN Health reporter Lori Johnson tells us what you can do to protect your children.
Enterovirus D68 usually begins with a cough, then can get much worse. Parents should immediately go to the doctor or hospital if a child has difficulty breathing or moving their arms or legs. Doctors across the country report seeing a new enterovirus symptom, paralysis.
We don't understand why sometimes in some children enteroviruses attack the nervous system.
The paralysis usually goes away when the child recovers from the infection.
There is no specific treatment or vaccine for enteroviral infections such as this one.
Doctors say the best prevention for enterovirus, the flu, and other illnesses is to keep your hands clean. Try to wash them thoroughly 5 or 6 times a day. Also, don't share drinking glasses or utensils. Try not to touch your face. Cover your coughs and sneezes, and strongly consider staying home so you don't make anyone else sick.
If you're exposed to a bug, doctors say you have a better chance of fighting it off if you have a strong immune system. All next week on the 700 Club, we'll be showing you ways to strengthen your immune system. The information will also be downloadable and on this DVD free of charge. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
And of course, all of us here at CBN want you watching to stay strong and healthy. Pat, back to you.
You know, I don't know if anybody's done an analysis, and it may be way off the wall, is the fact we had this flood of children coming across the border from Central America. Did they carry with them viruses that we were not familiar with in the United States and hadn't built up immunity to? It's entirely possible. I remember some years ago, I was over in Romania, and we were giving out toys at an orphanage. And those sweet little children, I had them sitting on my lap, and we were giving them presents and things, and they were so happy. Well, I got back, I wound up with a severe intestinal problem, and the doctor said, well, these children, he said it's the well, if you will, for this particular intestinal bug. It's in these children. The children had an immunity to it, but I didn't.
Well, there seems to be a lot of questions still about what this is, where it comes from, how to contain it.
Could occur. I mean, there were thousands and thousands coming across the Rio Grande there, and then they're spread out in the states all across America. I don't know. I mean, you know, it's just one of those things. But I do know what happened to me trying to love up on those children. They're so sweet, and they get in your lap, and you want to kiss them, and they want to kiss you, and they want to hug you, and all that other stuff. And it was beautiful. And we were giving them toys, and they were so happy. But they left me with a little bug that. You know, we had antibiotics for it, so it knocked it out pretty fast, but it's very unpleasant, and that's where it came from, according to my doctor, was those little children in in Eastern Europe.
Well, one of the things we should all be doing at this point in time is to be strengthening our immune systems. And as Lori Johnson said, all next week we're going to be sharing the latest scientific information on staying strong and living long. If you're a Pledge Express member, you'll receive this DVD we've put together automatically. There's no need to call or write. Just watch for it in the mail. And you don't have to wait until next week to request your free DVD. Call now if you'd like to receive your copy of Protect Your Health. 5 ways to build a strong immune system. All you have to do is call 1-800-759-0700, and we'll send out your free DVD. And I think you'll be very enthusiastic about the good news that's in there for you.
A man's wife and son vanished along with millions of others in the rapture. It's the cataclysmic scenario in the new movie Left Behind, starring Nicolas Cage. Alec Ramey and other actors also appear in the film based on the popular Left Behind book series. And they told CBN News why they chose the part. You can find those interviews on cbnnews.com. Left Behind opens in theaters nationwide today. Operation Blessing is helping provide safe water for families in Guatemala. Families in the village of Alotenango only had access to water for 1 hour each week. But before they could fill their containers, the water would run dry and there was never enough for everyone. Sonia's family had to use their meager income to buy bottled water. Operation Blessing helped the village set up a system to store the available water in catchment tanks, which is then gravity fed to houses in the village. Now Sonia's family and many others have access to enough water to meet their needs. That's great to hear. And you can find out more about Operation Blessing by going to their website at ob.org.